This first video is one of two that will help fully explain the mathematical calculations for determining the early start, early finish, and the late start, late finish times using the forward pass and backward pass method. So this is designed for those students who wish a more detailed understanding of how these values are determined. And as you'll recall from class, that the objective of doing this is to, one, determine the critical path, and then the next method is next objective, is to determine where we have slack, which activities have slack, so that we might reallocate resources, maybe crash one of these activities, one or more of these activities on the critical path, and therefore reduce the overall time this project will take. So we need to go through these calculations in order to do that. Now, for purposes of this project, you don't need to make these calculations since the template I provided does that for you. But some students like a more thorough understanding of how these calculations are derived, and that's what these two videos are designed to do. So, the first thing we'll do in this video is calculate the early start, early finish times of all of these activities. That's called a forward pass. In the next video, we'll determine the late start, late finishes of each of these activities. And then when we're done, we will again we'll have the critical path, which I've already predetermined since I have all these amounts filled in for you, and I'll go through each of these calculations step by step. So let's begin the forward pass. In the forward pass, you notice that these first three activities are the initial activities, so the earliest start will be at time 0. So the ES for the initial activities has to be 0. So I'm going to highlight them just to let us all know and remind us that we're done with these three on the early starts, because it has to be at time 0 since that's the initiation of the project. So what is the early finish of these projects? When is the earliest we could finish these? Well, if we're starting at time 0, we'll add, in this case, 15 minutes for picking up the trash, and that'll give us 15 minutes earliest finish for picking up the trash. 0 plus 15. Putting gas in the equipment, start at time 0. It's going to take us 5 minutes to do that, so the earliest finish for this activity is 5 minutes. And finally, getting the hedge clipper, starting at time 0, adding 5 minutes duration, gives us an earliest finish of 5 minutes, and then those activities are done. So we have the early start, early finishes for these three activities. And as you're reviewing these videos, please feel free to stop, review, replay it so that you can review and get a good understanding of these calculations if you desire to have that insight. All right, so the next step we're going to do is this next layer of activities. So what will be then the early start for these three? Mowing the front, trimming the weeds, and edging the sidewalks. Well, if you look backward, we're going to need to see and find out when is the maximum earliest finish between these two activities. Because picking up the trash and putting gas in the equipment, these two activities immediately precede these three activities: trimming the weeds, mowing the front, and edging the sidewalk. So we're going to look backward at the immediately preceding activities here and take the maximum early finish of these two activities. All right, so the early start for trimming the weeds. The early start for trimming the weeds, and I'll pull up the dialog box here for the formula, is I'm going to take the maximum of the early finish for picking up the trash and the early finish for putting the gas in. So 15 is greater than 5, so the maximum then would be 15. So I know then that the earliest I can start trimming the weeds is going to be at 15 minutes. The maximum early finish is, again, of these two activities that immediately precede. I'll do the exact same thing for mowing the front and edging the sidewalk. When is the earliest I can start mowing the front? Well, it'll be the maximum of the early finishes of the two preceding activities. And so again, 15 minutes is the maximum early finish of these two preceding activities, and the same is true of edging the sidewalk. So what is the earliest finish? I've got the earliest starts and now the early finish of these three activities will be, again, 15 minutes early start plus 30 minutes duration. It'll take me 30 minutes to trim the weeds. So the earliest I can finish trimming the weeds is at time 45 minutes. 15 plus 30. Mowing the front, again, early start of 15 plus 45 minutes it'll take me to mow the front. So the early finish for mowing the front would have to be 60. 15 plus 45. And 15 minutes early start on edging the sidewalk plus 15 minutes to complete edging the sidewalk duration gives 30 minutes for my early finish of edging the sidewalk. Down to trimming the hedge. Well, there's only one activity that immediately precedes trimming the hedge, and that's getting the hedge clipper. So I don't need to compare it to anything. Therefore, the earliest start of trimming the hedge will be the earliest finish of the immediately preceding activity, and there's only one of them. So it has to be 5 minutes, because that's the earliest finish of getting the hedge clipper. And then finally, the earliest finish of trimming the hedge is going to be the 5 minutes earliest start plus the duration. It'll take me 30 minutes to trim the hedge, so the early finish then will be 35, 5 plus 30. And I've just completed the forward pass, early start, early finishes for the first two activities. On to mowing the back. Again, the process just repeats itself. What is the early start? Well, now I'm going to look at just the one activity again, because that's the only activity that immediately precedes it. No comparison required in this case. So the early start for mowing the back has to be the earliest finish for mowing the front. So the earliest I can start mowing the back it correlates to the early finish of mowing the front. So is that 60? Take the 60, add the duration, it'll take me 30 minutes to mow the back, and my earliest finish of mowing the back will be at 90 minutes. 60 plus 30. On the next layer of activities, I have two of them, but look at how many activities I have immediately preceding these two. I've got trimming the weeds immediately precedes mowing the back, immediately precedes, and so too does edging the sidewalk and trimming the hedge. So these four activities immediately precede these two activities. So now when I determine what is my earliest start for bagging the grass, I have to take the maximum of 45 or 90 or 30 or 35. And the maximum of those four is, of course, 90. So the earliest I can start bagging the grass will be at time 90, after 90 minutes of the project. What is my earliest finish then for bagging the grass? Again, it'll be the 90-minute early start plus the duration of 30 minutes gives us 120 minutes on the earliest finish of bagging the grass. And then moving down to bundling the trash, it'll be the exact same comparison. I'm going to take for my earliest start, it'll be the maximum of the earliest finish of those activities that immediately precede the bundling the trash. And I'm looking at the exact same four in this case. So again, I'll compare 45 to 90 to 30 to 35, and the maximum is 90. Take my 90, add 15, and my earliest finish will be 105, 90 plus 15. And finally, the last activity in this project is to haul the trash. So what is my earliest start for hauling the trash? Again, I'll be comparing the maximum of the earliest finish of bagging the grass and the earliest finish of bundling the trash. And since 120 is greater than 105, my earliest start on hauling the trash then is at 120. The earliest finish of hauling the trash, will be 120 earliest start plus the duration of 45 gives 165 minutes earliest finish. This is the completion of the forward pass. We've just completed then determining all of the earliest starts and earliest finish times for this project. In the next video, we'll look at the backward pass, where we calculate the latest start and the latest finish.